Hey everyone, welcome to Office Hours. It has been a little bit. Thanks for standing by. We're all fine. We just had stuff going on. Hey Roy, how you doing, buddy?
Hi, Jeremy. I'm good. Also,
Doctor.
you know what changed? It was just the same repeat insanity over and over again.
Yeah. Well, you had a couple nights where it was, I just obnoxiously long and just a bombardment that it doesn't sound like fun.
Well, yeah, Wednesday, Iran retaliated for the murder of Larijani, and they launched a lot of stuff at us for about a 14 hours span of time. They started around 1:40 a.m. and it was quite intense, But having said that, hardly anything gets through. I think the UAE is still at 95% interception rate. So, what we hear explosions and we hear jets zipping around, but at the end of the day, I don't think much is actually hitting the ground. And the death toll, I think, is still 6 civilians and 2 military. So, as as dramatic as it is, it hasn't yet, because I don't want to say it's not having any impact, but it hasn't yet really had an impact in the infrastructure or day-to-day lives of most people. But everybody just sort of carries on, because what are you going to do? The big disruption is school. We're doing online school, and I get it. Like, last thing the government wants is for a school to get hit. um,
Right. I
the,
mean, an Iranian school was hit, so it's kind of
and over
no one
100
wants. Yeah.
schoolgirls killed. So yeah, you don't want to keep repeating that. But anyway, yeah, that's
It's
it's
actually
been. Go ahead.
it's interesting that interesting is not the right word here, but in Iran's retaliatory attacks, it is just focusing on energy infrastructure for maybe oil and U.S. and other allied infrastructure in the area. It doesn't seem like they're attacking desalination plants or anything that would cause direct or indirect harm to the civilian population yet. And I don't know if that's in the works either. I don't think they're trying to harm the people.
Yeah. So I could be wrong about this, but my assumption is that Iran has been launching its older weapons that have less effective guidance systems on them to get the GCC and Israel and United States to fire off its defensive missiles. And then once it gets through those, then it'll start doing the more accurate ones. And and the pattern that I'm seeing suggests that that is the case, because in the first week, they hit Burj Al Arab. I think the missile was intercepted, but the flying debris then hit Burj Al Arab and caught a section of it on fire. So since then, and then they hit the Fairmont Hotel. And as far as I know, there haven't been any more hotel strikes. So that makes me think, they were just lobbing the stuff at us that didn't have good guidance, and they weren't targeting hotels. They were hitting them by accident. And then since then, it feels like they've really just been aiming at U.S. military bases pretty effectively. The big exception, of course, is when Israel hit the South Pars oil field. The South Pars oil field, sorry, gas field. It's not an oil field. The South Pars gas field is the largest gas field on planet Earth. It is about 30% inside Iranian waters and 70% inside Qatar waters. And Qatar and Iran have a treaty about how that gas gets pulled out, and so that it's fair. But it makes it so that Qatar is the largest seller of liquid natural gas on the planet. And anyway, Israel struck the Iranian part of the field, and so Iran retaliated by hitting the Qatar part of the field. And we're kind of lucky that it's the end of winter, because if this was happening at the beginning of winter, Europeans would be in really big doo-doo land. Most of the fuel that they were going to use for winter has already been delivered to Europe. But Europe is completely reliant on Qatar for liquid natural gas. I mean, they get some from Canada and the United States, but the bulk of it comes from Qatar because they used to get it from Russia, but then they stopped trading with Russia because of the Ukraine war. So, the tragedy for Europe is one jackass attacks Ukraine and then they switch over to Qatar, and now another jackass attacks Iran, and now they're thinking, "Whoa, do you switch back to Russia or something? Like, what are we supposed to do?" And I think it was the Belgian foreign minister said, "I think we need to start dialogue with Russia." And you're in trouble when the guys who have been doing this proxy war against the Russians are now thinking they have to trade with them, which shows the extent to which this is such an epic foreign policy fail on the part of the United States. But anyway, there you have it.
Yeah. Well, it's hopeful. It sounds hopeful that Iran is sticking with kind of classic military targets and objectives, and isn't just lashing out angrily at everybody. I mean, they sort of are, but they're not, just casually destroying and killing folks, which we don't.
But they did say they will. if Israel and the United States increase their attacks. So, 2 days ago, Trump said you have 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz. And then yesterday, Trump said, I've been in secret negotiations with the Iranians and they're going great. And as a result, I'm going to wait 5 days to attack their energy infrastructure. When Trump said you have 48 hours or we're going to attack your energy infrastructure, Iran announced it was going to obliterate the GCC's energy infrastructure. So, this could get really ugly really fast if the United States and Israel continue to escalate.
I think so. We're in day 25 now, and I feel like the last week has just been this kind of repeat of escalation, retaliation, escalation, retaliation. Nothing seems to be changing. Iran doesn't seem to be reducing its strikes, even though the U.S. and Israel seem reportedly are destroying site after site after site. Nothing seems to be changing except for things are escalating further. Israel seems to be kind of refocusing its efforts in Lebanon, even though it's still doing strategic strikes in the heart of Iran. And the U.S. feels like it's starting to flounder more. I know that Trump it seems like, and it always seems like this to a certain extent, but he seems like he's freaking out.
Yeah.
And he's saying that he's having talks with Iran, and then Iran's coming back saying, we don't know what you're talking about. And then they say, are you talking about the message that we got? There was no talk. We did get a communique. And so there's no conversation that's happening. And then Trump was trying to pressure allies, both past and present, to bring warships to the Strait of Hormuz to protect it for oil transport and other transport. And then he kind of went off on NATO. So calling NATO a paper tiger, that he's basically begging people to come and help him in the mistake that he's made without calling it a mistake. And he's begging the people that he's already spurned and said, you guys are the worst. Please come help me. Like, I don't know how this is effective in anyone's minds. It reminds me of like that friend that we don't call a friend anymore, but they still keep coming by like, hey dude, I need your help. I'm like, why would I ever help you? Yeah. You were such an ass. Like, yeah, don't be like that. I was just playing,
Yeah.
So how do you think this is gonna turn out? I mean, you've already told us before, but any new thoughts with this continued Trump behavior, like both for U.S. foreign policy, and how do you think it'll actually play out?
So, there's, what is the saying? Don't burn bridges. I feel like Trump has burnt bridges, and now he's like, wait, what? He's like a child. He's like a 3-year-old who doesn't understand there are consequences for your actions. And he tried to play this big game like he's some kind of chess player. And the reality is maybe he was playing whack-a-mole. I don't even think he was playing checkers. Like, I think we're talking really low IQ, dumb shit. And the fact that he, botched Greenland, pissed off NATO, refuses to say whether or not he'll support Article 5 in the event it gets called by a NATO ally. He's bullying Spain because Spain refuses to increase its military spending, right? Like, it's just layer after layer after layer. And then he doesn't know how to open a Strait of Hormuz, which is hilarious because he keeps saying it's a very simple thing. It's just not something that I would do. The Europeans need to do it. And he keeps saying this, and then he's like, well, why? You're the one who got it closed. Well, you need to be the one it's your responsibility, jackass. Like, I don't understand. It's such a strange set of behaviors for an adult. Like, you just don't expect this.
Yeah, it reminds me of Mexico will pay for the wall, or Mexico will build the wall.
Why would they pay for the wall?
Does this make
That
sense
doesn't
at
even
all?
make sense. It's so stupid. The things that come out of his mouth. And there's actually a population of people who are like, he's so smart. Dude, have you listened to him speak? It's terrible. He sounds like an idiot. Anyway, so then what does he do? He starts browbeating Europe and bullying them and saying they need to open the strait. Then he says Pakistan can do it. It doesn't even need to be Europe. Anybody can do it. And it's like, well, if anybody can do it, why don't you do it? You're the one that started this war. And the answer is he doesn't know how. One of the things he kept talking about was invading Harg Island. And so the crazy thing about doing that is, let's say you put the Marines on Harg Island and you shut down Iran's oil production. Guess where all the missiles and drones are going to go?
Yeah, I was gonna,
They're just going to be sitting ducks.
what an easy target.
Yeah, it'll just be a massacre. I feel sorry for the United States Marine Corps that has to have Trump as its commander-in-chief. Like, the stuff that comes out of his mouth is so not thought through. It will make Quezon, the Quezon was the forward base in northern South Vietnam that was really close to the North Vietnamese border. And the North Vietnamese basically put it under siege and just artillery barraged it. It'll make Quezon look like a walk in the park because, first of all, Iran has much better equipment than the North Vietnamese had, but also it's such a small target, they could just saturate it. And, it's not like we'll have an effective defense system in place there. The whole thing is insane. And one of the problems that we have is it's like Trump gets an idea in his mind, like, oh, all you need to do to fight COVID is put chlorine and sunlight in your bloodstream. And it's like, how am I going to get sunlight into my bloodstream? Like, where did your brain go? And does the president not know that chlorine is literally one of the most deadly substances known to our species? Like, Putin tried to murder Yevchenko, the guy that was president of Ukraine at one point and ran for president. He with chlorine poisoning, dioxin poisoning. And he would have gotten him, except that it just happened to be that Yevchenko was really close to Vienna, Austria, and they had a dioxin treatment facility in a hospital, and they saved his life. And here's our brilliant president saying we just need to put sunlight and chlorine in your bloodstream. And that's what he's doing with this war. He just starts spouting nonsensical gibberish shit. And somehow we're supposed to figure out where this is going, but the Iranian people are supposed to figure this out too, because from the beginning, Trump has said, we need the Iranian people to rise up. And then he'll say things like, oh, it's not time to rise up now. Please don't rise up. I'm going to send in the Kurds. Oh, I'm going to send in the Iraqi Kurds too. Oh, it's better not. I'm not going to send in the Kurds. And like, it just, why? There's no plan. It's just random, and it's random noise. And I know there's going to be somebody out there who's going to be like, well, he's trying to keep the Iranians guessing. The way you keep the Iranians guessing is by playing this really long game and not talking about it, right? Speak softly and carry a big stick. You don't telegraph your moves and then change your mind because somebody came to you and went, I don't think that's a good move. A better thing to do is to have had a plan from the start so you're not constantly floundering. On day 3, Trump said he was in secret negotiations with the Iranians and they were going well. And he looked forward to talking more. And the Iranians are like, no, there's no such thing going on. Murdering Larijani was a mistake. And it shows me that they don't know anything about what they're doing, or that Israel has no intention of allowing peace to settle in. Because Larijani was the guy in the best position to be able to negotiate for Iran to make a peace deal. Right now, I don't know who would replace him. Like there's a list of like 3 or 4 guys who are kind of well positioned, but they don't have the kind of clout Larijani had. And one of the problems with the current situation in Iran is the IRGC isn't monolithic. It's not one group of people. There's a spectrum. And on one side are reformers, and on the other side are hardliners. And because of this war, the reformers have no clout. They're finished. All that's left now are the hardliners. But within the hardliners, there are several camps as well. So there are the guys who they just want to die as martyrs. They want to burn the world down, and they want to die as martyrs. And then there's the hardliners who are like Larijani, who are they want power. They want the Islamic Republic to survive. They want to have a strict conservative state. But they're also pragmatists and they're practical. And they've played the game to get into the position that they're in because they're ruthless and powerful. And as a result, have the kind of connections to other people where they can twist arms when they need twisting. And we killed him. Now you go, he's an evil bastard. I don't dispute that. He's an evil bastard. And you don't become the guy that Larijani became without having some skeletons probably in your closet and in your basement and maybe even in your front yard and probably across the street in your neighbor's front yard. Like, this guy didn't get to where he was by being gentle. But nobody who's in politics gets to where they are by being gentle. There was a journalist, I can't think of his name, in the 1970s. He had interviewed the Hells Angels, the boss of the Hells Angels, and then the boss of one of the mafia-run unions in the Northeast somewhere. And he was asked by another journalist in an interview, what was his scariest interview? And he said, Jimmy Carter.
And Jimmy Carter?
Yeah, exactly. And the guy's like, that was the journalist's response. He's laughing at the other journalist, like, why? Jimmy Carter, he's a sweetheart. And the journalist goes, dude, you don't become president of the United States by being a sweetheart. Jimmy Carter was just as ruthless as everybody else. He just did it with such charm and such gentleness on the surface. Nobody realized the kind of skeletons he had in the back. And he said, but I did. He scared the hell out of me.
Interesting.
Yeah. So the answer is, of course, Larijani was this brutal bastard, but he was also really the best chance that the United States had to negotiate out a deal. So then why execute him? Why kill him? Like, why go after leadership? And I know that the thinking is, if you kill enough of the leaders, the state will collapse. I just don't see that. All you're doing is giving everybody promotions. Maybe at some point you'll have killed enough of the leadership that they won't be able to make effective decisions. They'll become like the United States. But
I think we're assuming that they have a bad command infrastructure, which I think is, we're underestimating their military capabilities at that point. Not even their capabilities, but just their
organizational
discipline.
skills.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Dude, they fought the Iran-Iraq war for 8 years. A U.S. proxy war that the U.S. caused Iraq to do. They are battle-hardened. They know exactly what they're doing. And then the U.S. blew up Iraq and created ISIL. Congratulations, Frankenstein, your monster lives. And Iran actually ended up sending troops into Iraq and Syria to fight ISIL. And in fact, Soleimani, the guy that we murdered in the first Trump administration, was the Iranian commander in Iraq fighting ISIL. And he fought alongside our troops when they went in because Iran was coordinating with us, because an enemy of an enemy is really just another enemy, but I have to tolerate them for now. And what ended up happening was the Iranians who had with all this battle experience from the Iran-Iraq war, took that into the field in Iraq and Syria for the fight against ISIL and proved themselves again. So they're to think that they're noobs or don't have a good command structure is just asinine. It shows that the policymakers in the United States literally didn't do their homework. And then it makes you wonder, like, why do we have the CIA? What good does it serve? Like, when have they ever given us good intel that we could operate on? Maybe Maduro? I don't even know if that was a CIA operation. But, is Trump ignoring the CIA? Are they telling him stuff and he's just not paying attention? We know he's ignoring his generals, because that the generals are like tearing their hair out going, oh my God, what are we doing? So at this point, I just don't know how this unfolds. You ask me how this unfolds, and I just don't know. What has to happen is the Iranian military, the army, because the IRGC and the army aren't exactly the same thing. The army needs to turn on the IRGC. And I don't know how that happens. I don't know what the step is. The people have to take to the streets and basically talk the army into backing them. And I don't know how you do that while you're being bombed. And to make things even worse, every time a bomb hits, in the beginning, there were Iranians who were cheering because they were thinking the regime was going to collapse. But we're way past that now. We're on day 25. So now every time a bomb hits, they're thinking, is the United States and Israel trying to genocide us? And the more they ask that question, the more they start to go with the regime. And instead of becoming anti-regime, they'll start to defend the regime.
Right. There's no clear line of success or doom here. So I feel like in the Arab Spring, when Libya kicked off, the rebellion and the rebel forces, they thought we're either going to be destroyed. Gaddafi has showed us that, or we're going to fight to the death and we're going to be victorious. And there was a clear line of, we have to do this. There's no other choice here. And then, the UN passed its no-fly zone, and then NATO forces stepped in. And, well, unfortunately, the end isn't a great ending, because once it was done, it was done. But I feel like in Iran, no one knows what tomorrow is going to be like. There's no clear indication of, like, we don't even know. Like, this keeps happening day in, day out, where like I said earlier, it's just on this repeat cycle. So I can't even imagine what it feels like for the people in Iran who are hoping for some sort of any sign of a resolution one way or another that will spark some sort of insight or fervor in them. Like, let's go, let's do this. Like the initial strikes, I felt like that was something, like something's happening. People were getting motivated and moving. Unfortunately, it might have been too late, because thousands of people were killed in the streets, and those thousands were the most outspoken individuals, most likely. And so to get that population of outspoken individuals to come out again requires some clear motivation and end to this. And the attackers, the United States and Israel, like we don't even know why we're doing this still. So it's, if we don't know, then how could we give that message to the Iranian people of, like, we know what we're doing, like let's organize in an unspoken way of how to make this happen. But right now it's just a guessing game every day. Like, even, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the only way you would have been able to get the Iranian people is if you had a consistent message and just kept repeating it over and over and over again. Because exactly what you just said, in January, Trump came out and said, go into the streets. The Iranians had already been in a state of rebellion, but they were mostly peaceful demonstrations. And Trump said, go all out, go into the streets, bring down the regime, we'll back you, and we won't let the regime kill you. The regime says they murdered 3,000 people in 2 days. They just gunned down 3,000 people. Most neutral observer estimates say the number is probably closer to 15,000, although I've seen numbers much higher than that. But think about that. Even if it's 3,000, let's go with the regime's number. That's 3,000 of the most active protesters, and they all knew people, and those people are all thinking, is this the United States doing this again? And then for those who are older, they remember when the United States did this for Iraq, where they told the Kurds and the Shia to rise up, and then watched as Saddam Hussein massacred them. But then there's the population of people who also know what happened in Libya. NATO went in, basically destroyed Gaddafi's caravan. He was captured then by Libyan rebels who then murdered him. And then that was it. NATO was done. And it was like, dude, all you did was plunge Libya into a civil war. All you did was break the state. And there's, 12 different warlords vying for power. I don't think it's that many anymore because some of them have taken each other out. But it destroyed Libya and plunged it into a nightmare. So who would intentionally ever work with the United States and NATO knowing that? Somalia. Somalia became a proxy country fighting for the United States in its war against Ethiopia. Somalia attacked Ethiopia. Somalia was backed by the Soviets, the Chinese, Romania, East Germany, like the typical group. And Ethiopia was the US ally. And then Ethiopia had a communist revolution. And when it had the communist revolution, the Russians switched to Ethiopia. So we switched to Somalia. By the way, Romania and was it Albania? Two communist states continued to support Somalia even when they were our ally, while the rest of the communist states then supported Ethiopia. Maybe they didn't get the communique. And anyway, Somalia collapsed, and the United States couldn't care less. The UN sent in an operation to try and restore order to Somalia, and then we reluctantly went along, and then we played cowboy and refused to work with the UN troops, got stuck in Mogadishu when a helicopter went down, and we got our feelings hurt, and then Pakistanis had to cut their way through the rebels to get to us, to free us, and we pulled out because we were like, that's it. I'm a snowflake, and I melted in Somalia. I don't have resilience. When you shot down a Black Hawk, like, oh my God. It was like, what the hell was that? And Somalia is still in ruins to this day. And so, I don't know how anybody can look at the US track record, look at what the United States did in Iraq, and trust it. You have to be unbelievably freaking naive to trust that the United States is going to pull you through to the other side. The United States used Afghanistan to fight the Soviets. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan. The United States funded Osama bin Laden and the Taliban and all the other organizations that it came to hate later, and equipped them and had CIA training camps and sent them money. The instant the Soviets withdrew, it was like, Afghana what? I've never even heard of the place. And then we didn't help them build a road, a hospital. We didn't help them repair their country. We used them cynically so that we could hurt the Soviets, and we didn't care about the aftermath. And then shortly afterwards, Afghanistan plunged into a bloody civil war and the Taliban took over. And then we wonder why, Americans wonder why, everybody's pissed at us all the time. It's like, maybe you should pay more attention to what you do. It's like we're a guy in a china shop with a baseball bat smashing the china, and we're wondering why the guy behind the counter doesn't really like us. And I don't feel like this is rocket science anymore.
Or better yet, we're really good salesmen. We sold the guy in the china shop all of the china, and then we've come in with the baseball bat and smashed it, and then he owes us the money for it. So I think we have a lot of charismatic individuals who are really well versed and trained in selling things, selling ideas, selling propositions, with never any follow through here.
Yeah.
So it's a really bad track record, as you said. So that plus Trump is
equals, oh my God.
Speaking of salesmen and someone who can just sell every lie, which is painful to watch, and he's done a really good job of creating his following. But so on the global stage now, I feel like a lot of what we're doing, and we is in the U.S. and we as in, like Trump, because he's the Republicans are in control of everything right now, so we don't actually have much say. They're doing, they started this war, they're continuing this war for their own reasons. I'm not even sure if they know what those reasons are. They obviously don't have a whole lot to do with the Iranian people or global security or oil. There's concern that, because Trump did say this, that we're going to make a lot of money with this war from oil, which we, probably just meaning him and his donors and those who control, oil profits or earn from the oil profits, right? So there's that. And the rest of the world who is still like, what are you doing? So I don't know if I have a question here. I feel like it feels like just a stuck situation where you have this one person who has somehow put himself in control, or has been propped up and put in control. How does this come to an end with any hope? I want to get to a hopeful place, but if that's not the answer, I'm willing to hear it as well.
So I don't know, because I keep trying to figure out what the end looks like. So one end is the one that I proposed was going to happen, I think, in week 1, which is at some point Trump will go, we won. He's already said we've won, like, I think 12 times. And he's even said we won on day 1. So he'll just declare we won, and he'll make up an imaginary deal that never happened. And he'll which
he did yesterday. He said, "Oh yeah, great talks. We've got a great deal." Yeah.
Yeah. And then what he'll do is he'll just stop firing missiles. And I guess the thinking will be Iran can't attack the United States. It doesn't have the range. So who cares? The problem is Iran doesn't, just because the United States stops firing missiles, Iran doesn't have to stop firing missiles. And, I kept trying to put myself in the mind of the hardliners in the IRGC. And the thought that keeps coming to me is, if I were the Islamic Republic and I wanted to survive and I wanted to improve my life expectancy as an individual leader, I would want to make damn sure this doesn't happen again. Because 9 months ago was the 12-day war, and 8 months later, we're in day 25, so I don't know what stupid name it'll get, the 25-day war. By the way, these are stupid names.
Just like Operation Epic Fury.
Yeah, right. Anyway, I guess, what were the other... The asinine war, the foolish war, the stupid war,
the Epstein war. Operation Epstein Fury.
Yeah, that's very good. And so if I were the Islamic Republic, I wouldn't stop firing the missiles just because the United States stops firing the missiles. What I would do is I would keep the Straits of Hormuz closed, and I would tell the United States, I need all your bases out of the Persian Gulf. And I would continue to hammer Persian Gulf states that had air bases. And the reason I would do this is because I would want to teach the world a lesson. If you bomb Iran, you get recession, maybe depression. You're going to get $200 a barrel oil. You're going to have a lot of hurt. Don't mess with us. It's the same reason North Korea has the nuke. If you attack North Korea, somebody's getting nuked. If you attack Iran, oil is going to be extremely expensive, and Iran's going to go for the jugular, and it's going to try and wreck the global economy. And every state on earth wants some mechanism for deterrence. I mean, it's just survival. It sucks for the GCC. It sucks for Iraq. It sucks for everybody in the Jordan. It sucks for everybody that's in the crossfire. But then, if Iran does this, then it suddenly becomes a question: Do the GCC states want to keep the United States on its territory, knowing what the price is, knowing that the United States doesn't listen to it, even when it bribes it with $400 million airplanes and $1 trillion investment grants, that the United States still does its own maniac stuff. And here's a really weird thing. you would think the world would learn this lesson by now with the United States, that the United States is a transactional state, but then Trump is hyper transactional. Like he took it one level higher to the point where it's like he has amnesia from 1 hour to the next. He can't remember anything that's happened in the past. Like I bet he remembers that there was a $400 million airplane, but he doesn't have the concept of, oh, I owe that person. Like he doesn't have this understanding. So at the end of the day, the question that needs to be going through every leader in the world's mind is, can you work with the United States? Because let's say Trump, isn't president in 2029, which I think is, if he dies, he won't be, but I think that's about the only way he's not going to be president in 2029. But let's say we get to that point and he's not president any longer. And the problem is the United States will elect another guy like him. We have shown our true colors. We have let the world know who we are. Because, okay, the first time you go, okay, we'll quote George Bush Jr., fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, hope I don't get fooled again. And, we're really good at electing idiots, clearly. People can't speak. They say the most amazing things. I'm paraphrasing this one, but it's my favorite George Bush quote. Our enemy are clever, see, and so are we. They're constantly thinking of new ways to harm America, and so are we. And you're like, what? Are you supposed to admit that publicly? And then, of course,
someone's pointed it out to him before, and he's laughed it off. Which
he's laughed it off.
I don't know if that's comforting or terrifying. He goes,
let's ask the 2 million dead Iraqis and see what they feel.
And in between
war crimes and crimes against humanity. I still think it's wrong that Slobodan Milosevic ended up in front of the World Court, but George Bush Jr. hasn't. Like, I really think that needs to be corrected somehow. The double standard, like how many African leaders have ended up in front of the World Court, and the real war criminals. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure most of them deserved it. It's just when you compare their sin to the other sin. Like,
I mean, Roy, we have a convicted criminal as our president right now. So
a guy who tried to do a coup d'état.
No, I mean that's one of them. That's one of the things he's been.
Forget everything else. Convict the 34 felony charges he's convicted of. Forget the fact that he lies. He's a pathological liar and he can't comprehend reality. He attempted a coup d'état. How on earth did a percentage, was it 48% of the U.S. or 49% of the U.S. voters who voted for him? How on earth did they go, you know what? He did try to overthrow the government, but I can look past that and vote for him anyway.
What's really interesting is so when I was in the Air Force, I had to get a lie detection test for security clearance, and they only ask you like a handful of questions. It's not many. And so I don't know what questions they're going to ask until I get in there, and they will tell you the questions and they'll actually rehearse it with you so you're not surprised, because they want an accurate. I'm wearing like a harness on my chest and like probes on my fingers, and I can't move, and they just ask yes or no questions. And the questions they ask are, I'm 19 years old, 20 at this time. It's like, have you ever tried to overthrow the government of the United States of America? Like, no. It's an easy answer, right? But yeah, have you a coup d'état like Trump did, and so it is interesting, and he still to this day says that he's still trying to, which is like, you're president right now, like you've already got, like he's still upset about the 4 years that Biden was in control because his coup d'état failed, and he refuses to accept that it didn't.
And he's already talking about his third term. The fact is, the world has discovered that the average American voter is at best an idiot, and that they're willing to put in a guy who's not just a convicted criminal, but he attempted a coup d'etat. Like, what happened to firing squads? I was always under the impression that if you attempted something like this in the United States, you got shot by firing squad. The only question was whether you wanted a blindfold and a cigarette first.
So
And I apparently missed something here.
interestingly enough, I think it was Idaho just passed a law to bring back the firing squad specifically for child sexual assault. They're bringing back the firing squad, which was against the U.S. law. So I don't know how they're going to get away with this now, but I think that sends a clear message
Utah
in regards to
firing squad.
Really? Okay.
Yes. And I think either South Carolina or North Carolina has it as an option. You get to pick how you want to be executed, and you can choose firing squad.
If I were ever to be executed, firing squad.
No, you go for lethal injection because they don't have the drugs, so they can't kill you.
They'll still try to do something.
You'll just be stuck in solitary confinement the rest of your life, which will cause your mind to go away. Yeah, guillotine would be fantastic. So I suspect that firing squad is in violation of the Supreme Court, but at the end of the day, I don't think the law counts anymore in the United States, or the Constitution counts anymore. So it just doesn't matter.
Maybe the law may have been that it was the first time that it was associated with sexual assault. So ramping up this, because I think murder had always kind of been like, yeah, if you murdered someone, we're gonna murder you. We're gonna murder you right back. But this is an escalation, because for a long time, sexual assault in the United States, and I think a lot of places in the world, it's just depending on who is convicted. If you are a white man with money, then you go, you shouldn't have been tempted like that. Yeah. But if you're anyone else, we'll lock you up for life or kill you. So it's, it's fair.
And there were some southern states where the parents of the abused child, if the child got pregnant, had the option to ask for marriage. And so there were literally adult males marrying 13-year-old girls because that they thought that was the proper solution. So I think firing squad is better. Imagine being forced to marry your abuser as a child. I don't see how that made the world a better place. At least firing squad, you're protecting the abused child.
I think that's likely some kind of twisted interpretation of
it's the pendulum
Bible.
Swing. We go from one extreme to the other. There's no middle ground, right? What about mental health therapy for the country? And just no. We're either going to force the child to marry the abuser or shoot them.
They became one in flesh, so the Bible says that they are together for the rest of their life. And so if they don't want their daughter to be corrupted forever, she has to be married to the man that assaulted her. I'm guessing that's how that happened,
that's probably it.
That's not a correct interpretation.
That's the fun thing about religious fundamentalists. They always seem to figure out a way to make their interpretation work in their mind.
To justify it for their own means. Yes.
Yeah.
Which is
amazing.
It's ironic because that's what the gospel is kind of about in the Bible.
And Pete Hegseth, he believes he's triggering Armageddon right now. What level of narcissist do you have to be to believe that you can twist the hand of an omnipotent being and force that omnipotent being to change their timeline to suit your timeline? That's incredible.
It is fascinating.
What is he thinking?
I saw that.
He must think he's like a messiah or something.
I think Christian nationalism is becoming more extreme and more amplified now. I think that we're one in an election year and people are starting to pull back from it, whoa, this is not what I signed up for. And then so the reaction from those in power have been just pushing it even harder to see how far it can go. I think it's been fascinating. I know that Trump yesterday or the day before was speaking to Congress, pleading with them, hey, we need to pass the Save America Act. You guys need to get it figured out. I need you to work through Easter weekend and do this for Jesus. It'll and how do you I forget what else he said about it, but just like you need to skip celebrating Easter and get this bill passed for Jesus, which for those who don't know, the Save America Act basically is a voter restriction bill. It makes it so that people who want to register to vote cannot do so with their state issued ID. They need to bring a federal so they need to bring a passport or their birth certificate to register to vote, which for a lot of people, to get a passport in the United States, it is, I think, $130. I think that's right. And it takes weeks to do. Birth certificate, if you don't have it, if you've lost it or was for whatever reason you can't find it, then that also takes a good amount of effort and time before you can get it. So, and for registering to vote, there's deadlines, and if you miss that deadline, you can't vote. It's very difficult to do it. So basically, if you want to vote, you have to make sure you're a good record keeper and not lose anything ever, which good luck to that. Or you have to fork out $130 and wait 4 to 6 weeks to get a passport. But if you don't have a passport, I highly suggest you get a passport just for all kinds of reasons. It's a good way to step out of the country if you want to.
Yeah.
Speaking of kind of the rise of Christian nationalism and the Iran war and Israel's involvement, actually, before we get into kind of the ramp up in ideological hate and different attacks like that, let's talk a little bit about Israel and what Israel's up to right now. It seems like they have increased their focus on Lebanon. I even saw that an Israeli minister was talking about annexing southern Lebanon. Surprise, surprise. What do you think is the motivation there? Because it feels like the U.S. and Israel's motivations in this war are very different. Like, we don't know what the U.S. motivation actually is, besides covering up Epstein files and getting some money in the pockets of wealthy donors. What are you starting to see more clearly as the Israeli motivations here?
So that's actually really difficult on some level, because what I see is something that looks really irrational. Israel had this perfect boogeyman in Iran. It's too far away to actually do anything meaningful other than fire missiles at Israel. As long as the GCC had the early warning system, the Israelis could, alert their people in advance to what was coming. For Iran to actually do a war with Israel, they would have to march through Iraq and then march through Jordan. And there's a really nasty patch of desert between Iraq and Jordan. So it's not practical. There's no meaningful way that the Iranians could do anything to Israel. Israel has the nuke. So, there's no military solution to the Israeli problem. So at the end of the day, it seemed to me the right thing to do for Israel, if you're a rational actor, was leave Iran as a boogeyman under these oppressive sanctions that have crippled Iran's economy. So not only are they, a defanged, declawed, sort of pariah state, but their economy is wrecked. And then Israel is attacking it twice now. And the goal seems to have been, even since the Obama administration, to attack it. So, Netanyahu had, for 30 years, has said Iran is just a few days away from making a nuclear weapon. We need to attack it now. For whatever reason, he has this bizarre fantasy that he needs to attack Iran. One thing the Israelis have talked about from time to time is Greater Israel. And the idea is that Palestine isn't really enough. They need to conquer more land. The bizarre thing about that is there's only 6 million of them. So let's say you conquer South Lebanon and you conquer an area that has 2 million Lebanese in it. Then what? Are you going to ethnically cleanse it like you did Palestine and then spread your 6 million now between occupied Palestine and now occupied South Lebanon? Like, I don't understand what the end goal could possibly be. They're too crowded and they need to spread out a little bit. They're looking for resources. In any case, it looks like the kind of behavior you see when empires start to fall apart. They start to thrash about. South Africa, in its last 25 years, roughly, I think 25 years, had an event called the Border Wars, where it was stuck fighting Namibia, it was fighting in Angola, there were, it was doing, it was struggling against Zambia, Zimbabwe, and even Mozambique, and there was this kind of constant percolating of military action, and eventually it just tore up South Africa's economy. Like, it was not sustainable. Then everybody put it under boycott, and the South Africans were forced to then go negotiate a deal with the ANC. But the border wars transformed South African life. Like, it had a massive impact on it. And when you think about it, Israel's been in the border wars since it first invaded Lebanon in 1978. It invaded Lebanon and then withdrew and then invaded again in 82. And it stayed until 2000. Hezbollah actually drove Israel out in 2000. Then Israel invaded in 2006. It had one goal, and it was to get one soldier to get 1 foot in the Litani River. And Hezbollah had one goal, that was to prevent that from happening. And as far as I know, the Israelis never got a foot in the Litani River. They couldn't get to it. And then, of course, the whole time the Israelis kept saying the same shit they say now, which is, we're trying to end their missile firing capability. And so what the Israelis would do is they would announce, oh, we blew up all their missile firing capability, and then Hezbollah would lob a bunch of missiles into Israel. And then, they kept doing this right up until the end. They signed the treaty, an armistice. The armistice was supposed to kick in, like, I don't remember the day, I'm making this up, but like, let's say it was supposed to kick in on a Friday. They signed on a Wednesday. So then, on Friday, right before the armistice kicks in, Hezbollah fires another volley of missiles to remind everybody that Israel did nothing to its missile firing capabilities. And I feel like that's this scenario again. It's this, Israel just needs to attack. Its whole premise for existing is war. It's an army without a country that stole a country. And now it's got this really weird situation where I think they've become so delusional, they honestly believe they'll be able to get away with annexing South Lebanon. They're trying to carve off a chunk of Syria. In addition to the Golan Heights, they've already carved off. They want to grab another chunk of Syria. And when they invaded Egypt in 1967 and took the Sinai, they put settlements in the Sinai. Their original goal was to keep the Sinai. Just there was so much world pressure on them to release the Sinai back to Egypt, and then Egypt kicked their ass in the first 2 days of the 1973 war, that the Israelis went, okay, we'll give the Sinai back. What was interesting is Egypt had thought in the peace deal that Israel would leave the settlements that they had built intact, and the Israelis blew them up as they were withdrawing. And the reason was, at one point in the 1967 war, the Israelis were actually going through Egyptian villages in the Sinai and massacring the population. They were ethnically cleansing it because they were going to annex the Sinai into Israel and put settlements there. And so they were slaughtering the Egyptian population to make space. So they've always had this as their dream, like this wild dream. It's why they have 2 blue lines on their flag. One line is the Euphrates River, and the other line is the Nile River. And that's the dream. But what's insane about it is they don't have the population for it. It doesn't make any sense. It's beyond preposterous, and it's not sustainable because at some point they will end up with a majority Arab population. I mean, they already have a majority Arab population because there's 2 million Arabs in Israel. And then there's 3.5 million Arabs in the West Bank and 2 million Arabs in the Gaza Strip. Last time I did that math, that's 7.5 million. There's only 6 million Israelis. So they're already outnumbered. And the whole reason why they don't want to create a one-state solution, because that's the only just solution. 2-state solution is what we already have. We have a capo, Palestinian Authority, The kappas were the inmates in the concentration camps who ran them for the SS, because right, the SS were officially in charge of the concentration camps, but they realized they needed collaborators from within. We already have the capo; it's the Palestinian Authority. It works with the Israelis to contain the Palestinians while the Israelis wall off the Palestinian communities and cut them off from their land, their livelihood. Like, it's anyway. Ultimately, the final goal is the destruction of the Arab society. And one of the ways that this has kind of become clear is when they attacked I think the US actually attacked the desalination plant in Iran. Israel immediately came out and said UAE did it. And why did Israel do that? And the answer is they were hoping Iran would continue to bomb the UAE and go after the UAE's desalination plants. And it kills me because there's this conspiracy that the UAE is this Zionist state that's working with the Israelis. Well, if that's the case, then why is Israel trying to get the UAE's desalination plants blown up? And the answer is, at the end of the day, the Israelis have one goal, and it's the extermination of all Arabs. I mean, they've made that clear. They have protests in Israel where they chant "Death to Arabs." And they have slaughtered 75,000 people in Gaza. Well, that's the official number. The real number is going to be much larger. It's just nobody can dig through the rubble to find the rotting corpses. But when they do, I'm sure that they're going to find that the number is in the way past 100,000. There have been multiple studies actually done by researchers that are suggesting the number is going to be really 150,000 plus. The 75,000 is the number of people that have been confirmed dead. And when you think about what Israel has done, is it's laid waste to the Gaza Strip. It's obliterated. It looks like the surface of the moon. And so, the Israelis do these really fun tactics where they'll tell the Palestinians, we're going to bomb this sector. We need you to move to this sector to save your life. And then they bomb the sector they told the Palestinians to move to. This is way beyond we're trying to create security for ourselves by destroying Hamas. This is genocide. And what they're doing in Lebanon is a continuation of that genocide. So anybody in Iran who's thinking the Israelis are going to be their liberators is going to be in for a really nasty surprise. Israel has no goal other than the continuation of the European crusades. They're doing to the Arabs what Europeans did to them for 850 years. And the catastrophic irony of it, of course, is that when you ask the average Arab, what do you think about Jews? They go, they are an inherent part of Arab culture. And so this schism is one-sided. There's a group of people who suffered and were traumatized in Europe who have come to the Middle East and are inflicting that suffering and trauma on the Middle East. And there's no reason for any of it, because they could have easily just come in and lived out their lives and spoken Hebrew and practiced Judaism the way they wanted to, and nobody would have said anything. They didn't have to create this paranoid, violent state. They didn't have to steal the land from the Palestinians. They could have bought it with money. They didn't have to ethnically cleanse Palestine. We now have inherited this nightmare that's been going on since 1948. And the reason we've inherited it is because our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents let it happen. They encouraged it to happen, or they were incapable of stopping it from happening. And now we're on the brink of World War III because of this. And it's dragged the United States into this. And the crazy thing is when you think about this, this could be really bad for the United States for so many reasons. First of all, 30% of the world's fertilizer comes from the Persian Gulf. And then at least 20% of the world's oil comes from the Persian Gulf. I don't know what the percentage of natural gas is, but it's going to be in that range. So we're talking about major supplies of resources coming from the Persian Gulf. But there's another thing that I think a lot of people have missed, and that's the petrodollar. When the 1973 war happened and Saudi Arabia boycotted oil sales to the United States, what happened then was, so when you think about it, markets are completely irrational, right? They're completely emotionally driven, panic, fear, and hope. Like, oh, I think this will be a good investment, or oh my God, I think my investment's falling apart. I need to sell, 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 and it creates these really insane little things. So Saudi Arabia announces it's not selling oil to the United States anymore. I don't know what percentage of the United States' oil supply came from Saudi Arabia at the time. Let's say it was 20%. I don't think so, but let's just say for the sake of argument. Well, all the United States would have needed to do in that moment was buy more oil from Venezuela, Mexico, and Canada. Buy more oil from Scotland and Norway. It's not like those countries had boycotted oil sales to the United States. And then the people who would have bought from Venezuela and Mexico and Canada and Scotland and Norway can now buy from Saudi Arabia. There's no reason on earth for the price to change. But the price did. It dramatically changed, and it caused an oil shock in 1973. One of the reasons it changed was because people panicked. The other reason it changed is there was a group of guys who were like, this is the perfect opportunity to gouge. Let's ramp up the price. A bunch of oil companies realized they could make crazy cash on a fake crisis. And then in 1979, when the Islamic Revolution takes place in Iran, there's a second major oil shock. And that sent the price of oil up again. All of that oil, all of those profits were ending up in the pockets of a bunch of very happy people in the GCC. There were a bunch of really rich Saudis and really rich Emiratis and really rich Qataris going, what am I going to do with all this cash? The answer they had was, the dollar is the safe currency, so I'll put it in US banks and I'll just sit on it and let it accumulate interest. Well, all of a sudden, those banks had all this money that they could then lend off of. And so what it did was it made it so that the United States government could run up a massive catastrophic debt, $40 trillion debt, because it could just borrow from those banks using those petrodollars. So in effect, the debt that the United States has today is financed with those petrodollars. Well, if this situation causes those Gulf states to stop putting money in those banks because they don't have it, because it wrecked their economy, or that they stop putting it in the US banks because they don't trust the US dollar anymore, because the US dollar is losing, people are losing confidence in the dollar, and they're starting to move their investments over to the euro, for example, or the yuan, or, those would be the two currencies I think anybody would be considering. If you start seeing that happen and those US banks don't have all that liquidity laying around to lend to the United States government, then we're going to start to have a serious issue with the debt. I think Trump's going to add $2 trillion to the US debt this year. So who's going to finance that if all of a sudden the GCC states can't put their dollars in US banks, or don't want to put their dollars in US banks? And I think we could very easily see the United States getting into some serious financial trouble in the immediate future. And forget the $200 a barrel, forget all the other stuff. Forget the fact that the United States is allied with a rogue nation that's hell-bent on genocide. Forget that the war in Iran is at least a crime against humanity, right? It's probably also a war crime. It's undeclared. There's no UN sanction. Like, if the president of the United States can willy-nilly attack anybody, then why can't Russia willy-nilly attack anybody? Why can't China attack anybody? Why can't Thailand attack somebody? I don't understand. Why can't Azerbaijan? Like, this whole thing that the United States tried to create after World War II, where it was the hegemonic superpower that sort of regulated who attacked whom, has unraveled. And in part because of George Bush Jr. It's not just Trump's fault. George Bush Jr., when he attacked Iraq, like, the whole world watched and went, what are you doing? Germany said, please don't do that. We did that in, September 1st, 1939. Don't do what we did. And George Bush Jr. cut off all communication with Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder because he was like, "Oh, I'm a child and I can't take any criticism from Germany." And here we are. It's 23 years later, and the legacy of George Bush Jr. is haunting us on a large scale because now there's no system of international law. It's been thrown out the door. And we can kidnap leaders. We can do failed coup d'etats, and we'll still get reelected. Like there's no system of law, regulation, constitution, international law, or otherwise. It's a disaster. That's my answer about what is Israel doing. I don't know. Genocide. What else do they do?
I mean, I did not want to interrupt you because that was fascinating. For a while there, I forgot that this was live, and I was just enjoying listening to a Roy lecture. Which, by the way, there are going to be some of those popping up soon, so keep an eye out for new lectures coming out.
Yeah, we were supposed to do them, but I think the war derailed us. Like we were supposed to have already started.
We were going to have lectures here. We're still planning on doing that. So if you're a member of the channel, thank you. We actually really, really appreciate that. But I meant Museum of the Future lectures.
Oh,
so
yes.
we're gonna be doing both, but the war, yeah, as you might have noticed, we put out a lot more content than we normally do. So we're still trying to catch up with other things. I'm going to take a step back as you're talking about why is Israel doing this. I wanted to mention real quick that we had a longer conversation about Israel and Palestine, and late 2025, or I can't remember when exactly, but cleverly titled Palestine Part 1, Palestine Part 2, Palestine Part 3. So if you want 3+ hours of information on that, if you haven't seen that already, please give it a watch. I thought it is really interesting that unresolved conflict from World War II might actually be the reason for a World War III to happen. So looking at the way that Germany has handled Israel, the way that the Israeli or the generational deep trauma that has carried forward from hundreds of years before World War II, culminating in the Holocaust and World War II, that has just passed down and is going into Palestinians and to Arabs. I don't even think you mentioned the West Bank, but violence in the West Bank has been increasing over the past several days. Lots of settler violence. So it's unfortunate that we have had an inability to face our demons or confront our demons and resolve these very deep human issues. And it feels like we've been trying to build up these human systems that we are now starting to see collapse. Like you were saying, the U.S. trying to be the hegemonic superpower that controls and directs the good morale of the world, right? Or not morale, morality. I always get the word morale. No.
They're related.
Morals.
Morals.
Morale. Do you have high morale or high morals?
No. I prefer ethics.
Ethics. Yeah. It's easier to remember. But we're not the world police, and we're seeing what happens if you've set up this high standard and then that standard becomes what it is today. Then the rest of the world starts to go, hey, turns out we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that as you're giving off a list of different places that have just decided to attack their neighbors. And it's not just that. I think we're seeing a lot of extremists, ideological people become leaders all across the world.
True. Yeah.
Which is not a great trajectory, I don't think. So I think the increase in hate across the world, and I don't want to forget your discussion on the petrodollar, a system that has been established, a nonsensical system that is teetering on collapse if this continues more, which I can't even begin to imagine what that would look like for the economy
Disaster.
Yeah, so it's not
Yeah.
even related to the cost of oil and fertilizer, like you mentioned earlier, which would have, huge impacts on in terms of the cost of groceries and just all kinds of transportation of goods. Everything just goes up. But if the economy also crashes because of the petrodollar not being valid anymore, then it just doubles all of that, and we're looking at I don't know, another Great
I'm gonna
Depression.
I'm gonna say it. I think depression is on the table.
Yeah.
Forget recession. I think depression is on the table. The Great Recession was actually a depression. It wasn't a recession. They called it the Great Recession because they were worried if they said the D word, people would become depressed. And it's like walking into the doctor's office and the doctor says, you have a thing, and I need to cut it out. And you're like, well, what is it? It's a tumor. Okay. Yeah. Is it cancer? It's a thing. And not telling you that you have cancer as if somehow that helps you get through it. It's nonsensical, but that's the way that the ruling elite in the United States, the oligarchs and the politicians treat the American public, because they think they're a bunch of fragile little snowflakes, and believe that they need to just be kept on circus and bread, right? Like the idea is keep them entertained and distracted so that they can be easily manipulated. And so here we are, easily manipulated.
I wonder if it also has something to do with the stigma of mental health. It's just
That's
another.
also, yeah, I feel like that's part of it. Sure. Why
I'm
would you
not
get
depressed.
mental health help?
I'm just recessed.
Yeah.
Like, you need to see a therapist.
Like a recession is a normal thing that happens in the economy. There's nothing, it's not great for the employees who are going to lose their jobs in a recession. It's not, but it could also be a chance for those employees to retool and find a better job. People get comfortable, and so recessions can be a mixed bag. But generally speaking, it's a short-term downward turn in the economy. Depressions are a catastrophic break in the economy, where we're not talking about people just sort of needing to retool and change jobs. We're talking about people are going to have trouble feeding themselves, and they're definitely not going to be in a position to pay the rent. And so calling it the Great Recession was like walking into a doctor's office after your arm got chopped off, and the doctor going, "Oh, you have a great abrasion. That's a great scratch." And it's like, dude, it's just my arm was severed. Ooh, what a bad scratch that is. And I don't think that kind of conversation helps the patient in here. And so it makes me wonder, like the idea behind the United States supposedly was that there was going to be a free flow of information between the state and the people, and that the people would therefore be in a position to make informed decisions. And the irony of it all is that the government has always lied to us, but we had journalists that were supposed to double check that. And then the thinking was that the American public would then try to vote for people who weren't always lying to them. And then we voted for Trump twice. And you're like, oh, I guess the American public loves being lied to on a regular basis, because Trump lies like on average 30 times a day. At one point, the Washington Post was even keeping track. I don't know if they're still keeping track. It was an insane number of times a day. Like he must work hard. He must be one of the hardest working people the world has ever seen to be able to lie that much. I just don't know how he does it. I'm really impressed. I mean, as much as I hate George Bush Jr., George Bush Jr. couldn't pull off something like that. He didn't have the chops for it.
I don't know. You mentioned earlier, like the way his mind works in terms of like hyper-transactionalism, where he doesn't remember the thing that it just happened. Maybe he actually doesn't remember the thing that just happened. And so it's not so much that he's lying all the time, but he's just speaking. He's in a constant state of stream of consciousness where the thing that someone just told him just comes out of his mouth.
Right.
And we've seen it time and time again where he'll have a thought. It's like watching a child put one and one together and making two, which is fascinating when your child is 2 or 3 or 4. But when it's how old is he now? 81, 82? Or in 79, I don't know exactly, but it's like he has these two thoughts, and he'll just go off somewhere and be like, "Aren't those beautiful drapes? Those are the best drapes." And
Yeah.
like,
I
we're talking.
love gold.
I love
Gold
gold.
is like what? First of all, it's gaudy. You look like some 2-bit tyrant from the third world
I
country.
know. I mean, before he was even president, John Mulaney, who's a comedian, he had a bit about Trump, and he would always. The bit is just like everything that Trump owned was like what a homeless person imagined a rich person to have. Like, when I make it, I want a gold toilet. I want everything gold. And it's like, I don't know what. It's an interesting branding. Anyway,
Gold escalators.
it is. It's both entertaining and alarming to see all of Trump's old tweets and rhetoric come back up about everything he said about Iran. Basically everything. He has a really well recorded track record of contradicting himself constantly. Not even just a little bit, but like the literal opposite of the thing that he's trying to sell. He was selling the opposite not too long ago.
He's done that in this war. He said the Iranian people are great people, and then next thing you know, there are barbarian people, they're savages. You're like, dude, what is it? Pick.
So I think there is some like obvious mental issues here, which I think that's why he's lashed out really hard recently against Gavin Newsom, which Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has come out and said that he struggled with dyslexia, and he's being a vulnerable good leader, right? Like I'm not in favor of or against Gavin Newsom. He's not my governor. I don't hold any sway either way. I can't vouch for him, but generally anytime I think anyone that says, especially a man in the United States, is talking positively about their mental health conditions and how that they've dealt with them in their life, I find that very encouraging to other people who might be suffering from the same thing, or not suffering necessarily, but dealing with that sort of challenge. But Trump came out and said that, like, Gavin Newsom is weak and for admitting that he has mental disabilities and stuff like that. And I was just like, man, that if I've ever seen projecting more strongly than that before, then I don't know what it is. So
that's definitely projection.
I don't know if he's ever going to get the help he needs before he dies, but I don't think it's, if you want help, you got to seek it yourself, which obviously he doesn't. He wants all the attention.
I think he's been lying for so long, because he was lying 50 years ago. Like, if you just look at what he was saying when he would talk about a new building he was building, or the golf course he was making, he would just say the most insane outright. This is going to be very special. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. It's a building. People have seen things like buildings before. Like it's just the most insane explanation of like what he's trying to tell people. Like, this is really truly something special, something very unique, something very different, and like it's got windows and doors and elevators and walls.
They are some of the most bland buildings ever, too. Yeah. Like, if you go look at other buildings in the world, there are buildings that are like, whoa, that's spectacular architecture.
Yeah. There's a building going up near our house that every time we drive by it, I'm like, this is going to be beautiful when it's done. And it's not a Trump building.
I think Trump probably learned as a child that lying was the way to get by.
Yeah.
So a certain part of me is like, God, this is what a tortured child that never had an opportunity to grow up, but somehow has become president of the United States, which is a terrifying. I remember very clearly in 2016. I remember very clearly, but I can't remember the year, when Obama was still in office, and I was thinking, okay, his second term is over. Who is this Republican that's going to run against in this new election? And there was this, what were there, like nine or so potential candidates. Ted Cruz was the favorite, and it was just this. And then I remember seeing Trump throw his hat in the mix, and I remember laughing because I was like, this is funny. Like, what a
He
funny
came
thing.
down a golden escalator. And the crazy thing is, there was a Simpsons episode where Trump goes down a golden escalator and announces he's going to run for president. And he made it happen.
Oh man.
And he said Mexicans are murderers and rapists. And then he said, but I'm sure there are some good ones.
But the way that he would just like, I remember like talking to Cruz and then just like slamming Cruz's wife. I can't remember exactly. Like just,
and Cruz's dad.
I was like, what is happening?
What is happening?
This is, and then it flips and they're all like worshiping. It's anyway. I feel like we've given Trump. Yeah,
they're a bunch of bootlickers. I mean, that's the other thing that we've discovered is what a bunch of cowards American politicians and, by the way, European politicians really are. Like, what a bunch of Neville Chamberlains. Like, what? Talk about appeasement. What the hell is this?
I don't know if it's cowardice or lack of. I think it's part cowardice, part lack of ethics. But part of me just thinks it's all about greed, right? I mean, like, how could it not be?
When was it Bob Corker and Jeff Flake, two Republicans, said, we're gonna stand up to Trump, we're gonna fight him, but we also know our career just ended, so we're not even gonna bother running for re-election. And both of them threw down, and knowing that they were finished because they had a spinal column, but the rest of them all laid down. John McCain obviously didn't lay down, but he passed away. But the rest of them were just like, I'm a coward. Yeah. But you're right. Maybe they were, I don't know. I feel like they were cowards. They should have stood up to him. And then Europe should have stood up to him. And the fact that they just, like, even when he started this war with Iran, after he did the whole Greenland thing, which, by the way, apparently isn't over. And NATO has issued a statement saying that the first thing they will do is blow up the airfields in the event that the U.S. attacks. I mean, the fact that NATO is making a plan for how to respond to a U.S. invasion.
That's not good.
We're in County land. How are we here? Is the United States really going to do? So I know for a fact that a few years ago, I don't know, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I said something to the effect of, you know what? Why is it the United States is always picking on these small little third world countries? I think we should fight Germany and Japan again. That was great last time. It'll be great but apparently Trump heard me say this and has decided that's what he wants to do.
The two worst people to fight. I don't know if you know the history of Germany and Japan, but they're really good at fighting.
Yeah, they're really good at fighting. And we're in such an upside down world. Germany just passed Japan for size of GDP. Mm. I'm just blown away by that, right? Because how many decades after World War II it went? United States, Japan, Germany. And that was just the thing. And then finally China passed Germany and Japan. And now Germany has passed Japan. And I'm like, what the hell? Are we in the upside down? How is this possible? But here we are.
How long do you think it'll take before the U.S. drops off of number one?
I mean, China's catching. It'll take a while. China has a little bit of work to do, unless this particular event that we're in right now is the trigger that causes the United States to take a dive. And it's on the table. You know, I don't know what the odds are that it'll happen but it is not impossible that the United States will plunge the world into a depression on this thing. And I can't figure out for the life of me why the oligarchs who clearly put Trump in office, they were literally spending millions of dollars out of their own pocket to put him in, have decided that this is the path they want to go down. It's really bizarre. I just don't get it.
I mean, we talked about this. When you wanted to talk about hyper-transactionalism, it's not about what is best for the collective or even the long term. It is what's best for the individual in the short term.
Yeah.
Not their family, not their legacy, just their wealth, which if you ask...
But I don't even see a short-term gain. Like, what's the short-term gain in blowing up the United States economy?
I mean, like, look at oil, right? It's hurting the U.S. economy, but for some people, it's building their wealth by good measure.
The
So
oil men are going to be really happy. And then I guess if the economy tanks, there's going to be a bunch of cheap real estate, and you just go in there and buy some of that real estate up, which is what a bunch of the oligarchs did in 2008, 2009. So, maybe they've learned that lesson, like, oh, if we tank the economy, everything goes on fire sale, and we can go in there and pillage. But long term, it almost guarantees that there will be a socialist revolution or a communist revolution. It will be a violent event because I'm already seeing that pendulum swing. And I just don't get why they think this is a great idea. I mean, the United States is now becoming a two-hump society, right? It used to have a strong center, and what's slowly starting to happen is the left and the right are pulling apart. And at some point, that when your society gets too separate like that, you end up with civil war. That's why the United States did a civil war. That is the path that we're on now, and I just don't get why you would fan that fuel. The United States has become a country where everybody runs around saying, I hate, I hate, I hate, I hate, I hate. And it could be, I hate the bank teller. I hate the road in front of my house. I hate how sweet all the candy is, whatever it is. But that's the mantra. Like it's I hate liberals. I hate conservatives. I hate Fox News. I hate MSNBC. I hate this group. I hate that group. I hate. And I think one of the tragedies of that is it means that when you watch the news in the United States, it's all about outrage. You're not going to believe the really horrific, horrible thing that group over there did. Anyway, made myself cough.
I thought that was good emphasis, by the way.
And so that whole kind of constant outrage, it sells the news, but at the end of the day, it's also really toxic. And it puts people in their lizard brain. It puts them in constant fight or flight mode. And when people are in fight or flight mode, they're idiots. Because, right? That's the whole idea behind fight or flight. Your brain goes into, I need to either fight my way out of the situation or get out of here. Also freeze, fight, flight, or freeze. And, 90% of the time, you don't want to do either of those three things. You want to be in your human brain, the rational brain, trying to work things out, and as best as you can with an American public education, which is not probably very helpful. But at the end of the day, right, like that's become the way the politician class manipulates. That's the way that the advertisers manipulate. That's the way that the news media has been manipulating people, and it's stupid. It's just nonsensical.
It depends on perspective, right? So if you're looking about a positive societal mindset that is cohesive and working together for the greater good, yeah, it's idiotic, it's asinine. But if you're looking at making money, yeah, it's pretty genius.
Yeah,
which
is of course the way capitalism is. Yeah.
So however you can make money, keep people afraid so that they want to see what's happening next, so that they will stay tuned, that they will believe that this information is the best source of information. And how many different news sources are there now that are on constantly? So not even to mention social media, that is basically just propagation of all kinds of different outlets for different news media and false information, of just whatever the term echo chamber is relatively new, from like at least a decade. And it's just, you never have to leave your own biased mindset. You can just live there and be fed all of this information and be brainwashed, which is a challenge because a lot of people aren't even aware of it because it's just what they see. Yeah. And there's a psychological effect called the illusory effect, that if we see something repeated, we believe it to be true. That's just how our biology works. And it's exhausting for us to constantly think whether or not something is valid, because even if we're not paying attention to it, like it can just pass us by. We'll notice it. The same information will pass us by, and our brain will catalog that away subconsciously as the truth, which is really frustrating because it's like, no, man. But I think I think the making money here versus the what is ethically right and good for society is a big struggle. And it's made worse by those who have the most money tend to be the ones in charge of these systems,
Yeah.
which is a big problem. So while we're fighting the the hate versus the hate on whether that's left or right or whatever the divide is, the people with money are just playing us the whole time so they can keep making money. Which is
And of course, part of what we're seeing now is a rise in anti-Iranian hate in the United States. It's not the first time we've seen that. During the Iran hostage crisis in 1979 and 1980, there was a serious amount of anti-Iranian hatred that was boiling over. I was in Denver at the time, and the Coptic Orthodox Church, the Coptic Orthodox community is the Egyptian Christian community, was bombed because somebody thought it was Iranian, right? Because the average American doesn't understand that there are anything, actually. I was going to like specify that there are different kinds of people in the world, but and then I realized you just don't know anything. And so they bombed this church, and of course the Egyptian community was like, "What the hell?" Like, did you not see the cross? Like, we're a church. And then there was the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And at some level, I think they went, brown people, kill. And it was just, no thought whatsoever. But the language that people were using in the time period in 79 and 80, I was a kid, but I remember it. They were saying stuff like, we should just nuke them and let God sort it out. And just really outrageous, angry hatred that was spewing onto the Iranian community. And then over the years, I think some of that toned down. Like there's still a little bit of anti-Iranian hatred, but it got toned down. And then, of course, in the background, there's always been this very heavy volume of anti-Arab hatred. In Austin, Texas, there is a festival that's been going on since I want to say 1932, but please don't quote me on the year, called Mediterranean Festival. And what it is it's an Arab church. It's the Assyrian church in Austin, holds a festival every year, but they don't want to call it Arab Festival because they know that it's going to turn people off because the word Arab has become so toxic in the United States. So they named it Mediterranean Festival. And in the United States, you'll see a restaurant, it'll say Mediterranean food.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Usually it's Lebanese. Yeah. Or like, why did you call yourself a Lebanese? You're all Lebanese. It's like, well, okay, I get it.
Yeah. I knew a Persian restaurant in Austin that was Mediterranean food. That was what it said on the sign. So that's always kind of in the background. And I feel like in the time that we're in now, we're seeing a new rise. I don't feel like it. There's been multiple studies. When Trump was elected in 2016, there was an immediate spike in attacks on the Jewish community, attacks on Arabs, attacks on Muslims. And it was sort of this really insane spike. And it happened all at the same time. And of course, we're seeing it again. There's a group of people in the United States who are turning to anti-Jewish hatred because they think that the United States has been tricked into this war, which is probably true. But then they do this simplistic thing of, I'm going to hate all Jews because of that. And then you think, oh my God, dude, get a grip. Okay, when I have a friend who at one point turned to me and said, this is 20 years ago, so it was a long time ago. She turned to me and she said, I hate Sudan. And I went, wait, what? And she goes, they're doing genocide. And I'm like, yeah, but it's Sudan doing genocide to Sudan. So you don't hate Sudan because that would mean you hate the victims of the genocide. You hate the government of the Sudan. You don't hate the country of the Sudan. You don't hate the people, right? And in her mind, she couldn't differentiate. Like she got it as soon as I clarified. And I said, why would you hate an entire group for the sins of a percentage of the people. But that's exactly what this culture of hatred does, is it teaches you to hate an entire group. So instead of recognizing, oh yeah, Netanyahu is an evil bastard, it becomes all Jews are evil bastards. Or, the Islamic Republic, the leadership are evil bastards. It becomes all Iranians are evil bastards. 9/11 happens, all Arabs are evil bastards, which is really amazing because when you sit down and think about it, like, wait, 9/11 sucked. It was awful, but compare that to the Vietnam War. Compare that to the Iraq War. Like Vietnam, we murdered 3 million people. Iraq War, the low numbers, we murdered 2 million people. When we invaded the Philippines, the low number is 800,000 people. It was probably more like 2 million people, right? Like, if you're in the United States, you really shouldn't be pointing fingers at anybody. Forget the genocide of the Native Americans and forget the genocide we inflicted on the African slaves we brought over. Just think about what we've done since World War II in terms of, like what we did in Chile, what we did in Guatemala. If you just go through the list, you realize, oh, if I'm going to have that kind of hatred for an entire group, I need to hate myself as well. And I feel like this culture of constant hate has become an epidemic around the planet. So we see the Hindutva movement in India where they've become fiercely anti-Muslim, or the Buddhist monks in Burma who set Muslims on fire, like they pour gasoline on Muslims and burn them alive, and it caused the Rohingya to flee the country. The kind of rhetoric that we've been seeing out of certain countries in Europe, Hungary for one, just hate, and the fact that Brexit happened. Brexit happened for 3 reasons. One, there was all this anger about all the refugees who were trying to get into England, that refugees that were caused by the United States, the UK, and Poland attacking Iraq. And it triggered a mass exodus from Iraq that then went into Syria, and then Syria collapsed and plunged into civil war, triggering a second wave exodus. And, those people were pouring into Europe, and some of them were trying to get to the UK. And that was one of the 3 reasons voters gave for wanting to Brexit. They didn't want those people. That had nothing to do with the European Union. That had to do with Tony dipshit Blair. You know what I mean? Like that was the government that did this. This wasn't the government of the UK that the British people voted for. This had nothing to do with the European Union. The second reason that people wanted to Brexit was the austerity packages that the UK government, under people like David Cameron, were heaping on the Brits. There's this dumb belief in the right that if the economy is bad, the best way to fix it is to cut funding. It's like a person hasn't eaten for 2 weeks, they end up in the hospital, and they're in the emergency room, and they're in trouble because they're starting to show symptoms of malnourishment. And the hospital, the emergency room nurse goes, "When was the last time you ate?" And the person says, "It's been 14 days. And the nurse goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. We only feed people who have eaten recently. Otherwise, we think that the best cure for your starvation is to cut off your food supply." That's what austerity is. That's how stupid austerity is. And there's all this research that shows this bullshit. There was these 2 Harvard professors who published this book showing how amazing austerity worked, that it was brilliant, you should do it. A grad student wanted the data because he was writing a dissertation and needed that data. And so he emailed those Harvard professors because this book, everybody was raving about it. Oh, it proves that the right has been right about austerity. It's such a good thing. And this grad student emailed them and said, "I need the data." They said, "Okay, we'll get it to you." They didn't get it to him. So he emails them again. "Hey, where's the data? I really need to see it." They don't email him. He sends them another email. This is, like 3 months now. He's like, "Dude, I'm getting in trouble here with my dissertation. I need this data. If you don't turn it over to me, I'm going to basically turn you in, because if you publish research, the data becomes public domain." And that grad student had a right to see the data. They finally turned the data over when he threatens them. They fudged all their results. It was all bullshit. Their data showed austerity screws up economies. So all these UK voters are like, I'm voting against austerity. I'm voting to Brexit. That had nothing to do with the European Union. That was the conservative government of the UK that those idiots who voted for Brexit voted for. The third reason people voted was polls. And by polls, I don't mean sticks that are stuck in the ground. I mean people from Poland, which makes me want to tell a joke. Why can't you get a good seat in a stadium in Poland?
Why, Roy?
Because no matter where you sit, there's always a pole in front of you.
Damn it.
So there's all these UKers who hate polls. So Poland joined the European Union in 2008, which meant that Schengen kicks in, which means there's no borders between Poland and the UK. In 8 years, 1 million Poles moved to the UK. And there was a population of people in the UK who were like, I freaking hate these Poles. They're Catholic. They eat kielbasa. I want to dig them out of my country. UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, came out and said, we're not racist. The Conservatives are racist, but we're not racist. We hate all immigrants. We don't just hate the brown and black immigrants like the Conservatives do. We even hate the white immigrants. And that was the basis for their popularity during that Brexit vote, was that they were going to dig the Poles out of the UK. And the way to do it was to Brexit. So of the three reasons that people voted, the first two had nothing to do with the European Union, but the third one had everything to do with the European Union. So the population of people who hated Poles, who voted for Brexit and broke their own economy because they hated Poles so much, at least that population voted in a logical, intelligent way, because they were at least voting on their hatred of a whole group of people, because I don't know what it is. I've never met a Pole that made me want to hate them. So I don't get it. When I met Lech Walesa, I almost died because he was like my childhood hero, and I couldn't wait to run up to him and say hi. I don't understand this. I'm going to hate an entire group of people. For what? What is it that drives this? And so we're in this phase right now where there's the hatred is showing up in all sorts of weird ways. I was recently talking on a podcast, and a guy said, UAE's getting hit with missiles and drones. And his response was, and we cheer every time. And I'm like, what? Why do you hate the UAE? Like, what is the UAE? Oh, I remember the Iraq War. That was the UAE. Oh, no, wait, no, Vietnam. That was the UAE. Oh, the genocide of Native Americans. That was UAE. No, the UAE didn't do any of those things. I'm trying to remember. Oh, I know what it was. It builds really tall buildings. Like, what is the basis by which you would hate the UAE?
Did he give an answer, or was there time for it?
There wasn't really time for it. I was just like bewildered, like in the moment, deer in headlights, like, what? You're cheering because we're getting hit? Screw you. I'm going to go backwards in time, because he was in London, and I'm going to cheer every time a V2 and a V1 rocket get launched during the Battle of Britain during the London Blitz. Like, what a jackass. Screw you. Why would you cheer? And I think that's the level at which there's this hatred thing is kicked into place, where we've lost our humanity and we've lost grip with reality. There is no reason to cheer because a country that had nothing to do with crimes against humanity or war crimes is getting hit by missiles for a war it didn't start and wanted nothing to do with. It makes no sense. Like if you're cheering because an IRGC outpost gets smashed, okay, at least you're cheering because there's tyranny. I feel sad for the innocent people who get killed in the process. But, there's at least some kind of goal at the end that you're looking towards. What's the goal in cheering for the UAE getting hit with a missile? Do you hate the Burj Al Arab? Like, what? Why? And I think what people have done is they've gotten into these weird little, oh, I'm with this group and I'm against that group. They've created like these cliques in their mind. Like, I love this country, but I hate that country. You know, right? Like, I love Qatar, but I hate UAE, or I love UAE, but I hate Qatar. But why? First of all, if we lined you all up, nobody can tell you apart. Because first of all, you wear the same outfit. And culturally, there isn't much separating you. The Qatar, by the way, I am a fan of both Qatar and the UAE, just so we clarify that. Qatar, has different policies than the UAE. They've gone about creating their society slightly differently. But at the same time, they both have these fantastic downtowns with these massive, glorious, gorgeous skyscrapers. And, so at some level, at the superficial level, there's no way anybody can tell the two states apart. They play very different roles. They do things different economically. But at the end of the day, they really are just sort of brothers and sisters. But having said that, I want to take this even further, and I just want to remind everybody that even though Israel has gone off the deep end and is doing this bullshit stuff and has punished the Middle East for, let's see, it's 26 now. So what is that? 78 years. It's punished the Middle East for 78 miserable years. At the end of the day, the Jewish people really are an inherent part of the Middle East's culture. And at some point, and I know that the average Arab knows this, at some point, they're going to calm down and they're going to beg for forgiveness. And, a huge part of Middle East culture, Jewish Middle East culture, Muslim Middle East culture, Christian Middle East culture is forgiveness. There's also a vengeance culture in the Middle East, just like there's a vengeance culture in the United States and a vengeance culture in Europe. People will point to the Middle East and go, oh, there's a vengeance culture. Yeah, right. Like after 9/11, when the United States blew up Iraq and Afghanistan, that was vengeance.
What's the favorite part in all of our movies? It's when the good guy gets back at the bad guy.
Exactly.
And when it doesn't happen, we're like, oh,
what?
Man. And then
why did he let him go?
Then they get forced to do it, and you're like, hell yeah.
Yeah. That's it. That's the Hollywood trick, is the person pulls a gun and then you shoot him because you had to, but you were going to let him go. I would love to see a Hollywood movie not do those stupid little tricks at some point. Wouldn't that be, you know what I mean? Like the guy that betrays you, you're the hero. There's that guy that betrays you, but then repents. That guy has to die. He will always die in every movie, whether it's Ragnarok with Thor Ragnarok or Enemy at the Gates. It doesn't matter. That guy can't redeem themselves and live to tell about it. They have to die. It's the only way they can redeem themselves. These Hollywood tropes are old. They're getting boring. And it's one of the reasons why Hollywood is in trouble. It's going to have to start writing better stories. And stop with the vengeance tropes. What we need to do is we need to start doing a different set of messaging. And that messaging is the truth about humanity. And the truth about humanity is that we're really gritty. We do awful things. We're capable of, the same person who's capable of good is capable of evil. Right? There's no hero. There's no villain. This idea that we have that it's black and white. It's like Star Wars. Everything is the dark side of the Force and the light side of the Force. It's not true. That's not how the world works. Everything is messy. It's one of the reasons why Truth and Reconciliation was such a powerful moment in South Africa. Right? Just come tell your story, tell us where the bodies are, and you get to walk away. We just need to clear the air to figure out where things are. And, it wasn't 100%. It didn't work as well as everybody had hoped it would work, but it did work to a degree, and it did allow people an enormous amount of healing. And I think that type of storytelling has fallen off of our entertainment industry. We don't do that. Instead, we do these Like every single Hollywood movie, person's doing all right, things are going well, and then it crashes and it's like death, everything's shit. There's no way they'll ever recover, and then they slowly recover, and then they finally achieve their vengeance, and then the movie ends. And it's like, dude, at some point, I get that formula works every time, but at some point, people are gonna be like, yeah, I've seen this movie. It's on repeat, and people won't because they have amnesia.
I think it's a comfort thing.
It is a comfort thing. I mean,
get not just the escapism and the entertainment and the expectability of it, and it doesn't challenge our mindset or our way of thinking. But I think, like what you're talking about, is the hate spectrum, or just the extreme of hate. I think starts from when we start to like believe that there is a right and a wrong in human behavior and the way we believe and treat others, right? Like you're saying, we're messy. We are messy beings. We screw up all the time. We need grace all the time. We need forgiveness. That doesn't stop us from making mistakes and doing horrible things. But we start to believe that the horrible things that we did actually weren't horrible because they're justified.
They were justified. Yeah.
And that's a problem. That's a huge problem, because then we start to really believe that their horrible things are justified, which means that the horrible thing we did to that person is horrible, which it can go both ways too. So like if a horrible thing happens to us, like think about the Me Too movement, horrible things happening to women, for young women in their lives earlier on, they were trained by our society that for some reason they deserved it. And so that like it has done so much damage, this belief that the things that we do, both good and bad, we can justify them either way, when it's simply not true. No. And so now we have this belief system in place that is constantly reinforced by our culture and even our movies. I was making that as a joke, but yeah, it's true. Like it reinforces the fact that like, or even like looking at MAGA or really any ideological viewpoint, that what you believe that others are saying is unjust or harmful or violent or abhorrent is actually just the right thing, and you should continue doing it, which is dangerous. It's very dangerous. It's very dangerous. And we're seeing a lot of anti-Arab, anti-Jew, Iranian, a lot of Islamophobia in general is rekindled, and is in Texas. I'm seeing Texas politicians starting to call for banning Islam again, which is like, whoa, what?
There we go again.
The whole religion, you're trying to ban it? I don't know if you know
the largest religion on earth.
How the United States was formed, but it was a freedom of religion.
We used to be secular. We are now a theocracy, and it's painful. It is. It's also a good advertisement for why you shouldn't become a theocracy. I feel like Afghanistan, the Islamic Republic, Israel, and the United States have become the poster children for why theocracies suck.
Yeah, it ruins both the state and the religion.
Oh my God. Like, just imagine, the Star of David is a holy symbol for Judaism, but it is now mingled in with the genocide that the state of Israel has done. If you're Jewish and you don't like what the state of Israel has done, you're stuck now with the fact that the state of Israel essentially stole your religion and stole your symbol and have done this in your name. And that's why there's the Not in Our Name movement. It's right, this movement of Jewish Americans who have said enough is enough. We need to stand with the Palestinian people. The tragedy is that there's good people on both sides, and we just need to remember that. We need to remember our humanity when we're going into these things, and stop sticking people in boxes. And we do the boxes to ourselves, right? People will go, "I am X," and they'll make a stand. So it's but the answer is for you to then go, oh, okay, and accept that person rather than, oh, well then, and then push back and feel threatened by it. I've never understood this I'm threatened by that person being something other than what I am. It just seems weird to me.
Part of it for me is that more recently in the past, I don't know, 5-10 years, people aren't just saying it like they used to. They're like, using social media and screaming it. Like,
yeah,
I know,
in all caps.
I feel like, yes, quite literally, whether it's, MAGA or, trans rights or whatever the identity crisis is for the individual, they're just like, I am this thing. You're like, okay. Yeah. I don't care. You could be whoever you want to be. Why are you yelling at me? I'm me too. Like, let's, can we stop yelling about it? Let's just go about our business, please. And I never had an issue with you before. Like, why are you in my face about this? Why is everyone constantly trying to judge each other based off of what they think about this other thing that was never an issue before?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I get it. We want to belong to our clan, our tribe.
Sure.
Right. But at the end of the day, we need to remember that the other tribe, their poop also smells like poop. And they also get cavities. And, like, they also have dreams and aspirations and goals. They might be in a state, and that state might be doing evil stuff, but that doesn't mean you need to convict the whole group. I'm part German, as I've said on many occasions, and I'm ashamed of what Germany did in World War II. I'm also ashamed of Germany's policy towards Israel right now. It doesn't make me an evil person. It just means that I'm carrying the weight of those bad decisions from my heritage. I'm also part Italian, and I gotta tell you, when I watched that opening scene of the movie Gladiator where the Romans are murdering the Germans, I get really confused, but I find myself cheering for the Romans. I do. It's very painful and confusing, though. It's probably because I like the color red, and the Romans also clearly like the color red. But like I'm saying it as a joke. But my point in making it was, when we stick ourselves in these really weird categories, those categories are fake. They're imaginary. And at some level, what we've done is we've put other people in categories and we imagine what we think about that person rather than having the conversation. And one of the things that has become very abundantly clear is when you talk to the person, it brings down the temperature. Germany is the perfect example of this. So if you look at a map of Germany and its support for AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland, the AfD, the neo-Nazi party in Germany, it's that map looks identical to the map of Germany where the immigrants are, but in reverse. So where immigrants are, the AfD doesn't have a large presence. Where there's a lack of immigrants, the AfD has a large presence. In other words, the anti-immigrant party does the best in the places where there aren't many immigrants. Now, I know some people are thinking, well, that's because the immigrants are voting. No, most of those immigrants don't have the right to vote. But those immigrants are in contact with people. And when those people are in contact with immigrants, they, I guess, learn about them and then stop fearing them. And as a result, are less likely to vote for the anti-immigrant party. And so at some level, what happens is, as we have dialogue and communication with people, those barriers start to break down and you start to realize how nonsensical they are. And that's what we need to be doing right now, is we need to be focusing on that and supporting each other. Like if you run into an Iranian right now, they just need you to listen. They don't need you to tell them your opinion. They're going through all sorts of emotions. They're on a roller coaster. One minute they're thinking the state they love is about to be destroyed, or the state they hate is about to be destroyed, depending on where they are politically. And the same is true for any other group. and stop cheering for people getting killed in a missile attack. That's really gross. I don't get it. It's just, I'm not kidding about getting in the TARDIS and going back in time and cheering for the London Blitz. Hypocrisy is hypocrisy.
Yeah, there's a lot of hypocrisy about right now.
I need to find the TARDIS though. I don't know where I put it.
Yeah, it's smaller on the outside. So it's easy to misplace is what I mean.
And on that note, we should probably just end it here. Because I think we're devolving.
I mean, this is a lovely conversation to end it with in terms of like discussing a hopeful side to all of this. Because I think, yeah, we all have the ability to forgive in us. And I think the majority of people can do that. The propagation of this false sense of hate towards the other, it feels unnatural, especially since most of that is being done online. And because it is very hard to do in person.
It is very hard. That's the challenge.
You can do it for a little bit, and then eventually, even if you come to blows, most people are like, "Oh, well, are you all right? That was, wow, you're a pretty good fighter. Where'd you learn how to fight?"
Do this?
And then it's just like, all right, then you become best friends. It's like, oh, okay, why were we mad? That was dumb. So I think, yeah, what were you going to say? What's the challenge?
The challenge is that nasty thing you were going to post online. I want you to go find that person and say it to their face.
But first, make sure that ask
90% of the time you're not going to be able to, because you're going to be like, this is really a gross thing to do. But then there's that 10% of the time where you're going to do it and it's going to lead to violence.
Make sure it's the right person first.
No, I think you should just randomly do this. I think if you're a jackass online, you should be a jackass in real life. Why not? Well, why aren't you? I mean, are you a chicken?
Well, no, I mean, is if you're, say you don't like someone who is Muslim, don't just assume that the first person wearing
brown
something
person
on their
they
head,
walk up to, I hate Muslims.
It's like, I'm not Muslim. I'm
Mexican. And then at that point, they're like, I can't tell y'all apart. Y'all all look the same to me.
Well, I feel like that happens a lot anyway. So I don't know if this is a good exercise anymore, Roy.
It probably isn't. It's probably like something out of Fight Club where you're supposed to just sort of run up and punch somebody at random.
Yeah, let's not start assaulting people. I don't know if this is good advice.
It's probably really awful advice. But my point in the exercise is if you imagine it mentally, most people wouldn't be able to do it because A, you realize how stupid it is. But B, there's the fear of violence. Like, oh my God, if I do say this to this person, what will that person's response be? And I actually think that the fear of violence is one of the things that's supposed to keep us in line. It's one of the mechanisms that we have as a species to create social order. Like, oh, if I do X, Y will happen. But one of the things that's stupid about the online universe, which I've come to really loathe at a core level, like every once in a while I'll post on Facebook, mostly I'm just being a sarcastic jackass, is the fact that you can't say that. You would never be able to say that thing in front of another person, and yet you posted it online like you were getting away with it. For the record, I'm a sarcastic jackass all the time. Like some people I think commented, I don't like this sarcastic Roy. What the hell? I've always been sarcastic. You just weren't paying attention.
Roy on Facebook is like hanging out with Roy one-on-one.
I like to say stuff that's bizarre and challenges people to think.
Roy will send me a message every once in a while. I'm just like, I'm going to look it up so I don't look like an idiot when I respond first, because I have no idea what you're talking about. I got to make sure that this is not a typo before, because it's either or. And then I have to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, Roy. And he'll explain it to me. And oh, okay. And yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
So here's a challenge to anyone watching this. What should we all be doing when we approach someone
from the other group?
I know someone's going to be like, yeah, it's from the other group. Like let's leave, because I know a lot of people are probably I think everyone kind of watches us, but that's probably not true. But like if we were to walk up to a very proud Trump supporter, I'm in North Texas right now. I see Trump 2028 flags all over the place, and people wearing Trump 2028 hats and whatever, all that nonsense. So what should I say to these folks when I'm interacting one-on-one with them? Because it happens quite often, actually. And I just said, this is not productive. This is not,
Yeah.
I'm not
Why
going
would
to
you
engage. Yeah. I will have other conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. Walk up, say, man, the weather's been crazy lately. Check out the fact that it hasn't rained in forever and it's 98 degrees and it's March.
Yeah.
And, but
And
why
then
are
go
you
right
going to
into
talk about
global
the
warming.
MAGA hat? And then he'll say it's a Chinese conspiracy that's been perpetrated by trans people who want to make your pets gay and then eat them.
I'll say, where did you hear that?
That's a good answer. I like that.
That's usually what I say. If I don't know them all. If I know them all, I'll say, no, that's not true. That can't be true. That doesn't make it. There's no way that's true. Oh, man. So anyway, if you want to share with us how you might interact with someone who believes something that you believe might be an effect of brainwashing, then please let us know. I'd be curious to go through those, and I might even try some out and report back to you and see.
If Jeremy shows up with a black eye.
If I have a black eye, or I have a closer relationship with some folks, it should be interesting. So we'll see how that goes. I'm here to experiment on your behalf. This is not for entertainment. This is for a chance for us all to learn what works.
Record what your interaction was like. We'll post it on Facebook.
Should be exciting. Oh boy. All right. With that, anything else, Roy, you can think of?
If somebody can figure out how this war ends, that's what I'm curious about. Because I don't see how this war ends. I don't get it. Like, I know Trump's saying he wants to have J.D. Vance go to Pakistan to negotiate out a peace deal with Iran. Pakistan has said that they're ready to welcome J.D. Vance to do this. I just don't see how that turns into anything meaningful. So, and even if it does turn into like an armistice, are we going to do this again in 8 months? Like, how does this end in a way that it ends? Does it escalate further? I just don't get it. I don't know where we are.
I feel like it's going to be one of those family fights that next time you're gathering around as a family, just nobody talks about it. So it might stop, but I don't think it'll just be like, yeah, we just don't talk about that anymore.
It'll stop until Israel fires missiles at Iran again. And they're going to need to do it before 2029 because, right, there's a possibility that Trump won't be president. It's unclear what will happen.
Yeah, I'm curious how this is going to continue to roll out up into this year's election. But we can talk about that later because we've got until November.
Yeah.
And
it'll be interesting to see if we're looking at $200 a barrel at that election or if that stops before we get there. It'll be exciting. Because, so one of the things I think people forget is the amount of money at the pump may not actually have that big of an impact on your day-to-day life, but it'll have down the road impact because it'll mean raising the price of everything else, right? Food will become more expensive. Transportation will become more expensive. The Amazon stuff that's being delivered to your house will become more expensive. I've always been surprised at how emotional people get at the price tag that they pay at the pump. Because it always seems so irrational. Like, dude, what you're paying $50 a year extra, like chill. There's so many other things to be upset about. Even if it's $200 a year, like it again, there's so many things to be upset about. But if we're talking about a really large increase in the price of petroleum, you're going to see it hit every sector of the economy. And I think, the United States has been really suffering from bad inflation for the last 5 years. This will just continue to fuel that inflation. And as that happens, it means the devaluation of the US dollar. And at some point, other countries are going to have to start asking questions like, do we still want to have our currency tagged to the US dollar? Do we still want to have our savings in US banks? If the dollar keeps losing value, they're losing money. And especially if you're an importer country, right? And you rely heavily on imports, then as the dollar loses value, it starts to really hurt. If you're a producer country, it's not bad because now your products are cheaper. And so there's lots of questions that are going to have to be asked in the next few years just because of this stupid war.
Stupid is a good word to describe it. So,
yeah. And for the record, I wish the IRI had gone away in the first 3 days, like everybody was saying. That would have been fantastic. But it turned out Israel and the United States didn't have a plan. So, oops.
That's what happens when you get anxious to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So hang in there, everyone. We're all doing fine. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thanks,
stay
Jeremy.
tuned for more office hours. I'm sure we'll get another one of these up maybe this week. I don't know when. I never know.
So the Museum of the Future talk is supposed to happen this Thursday, but we're also scheduled to have like a catastrophic rainstorm. And so there's a distinct possibility the streets will be flooded and we'll have to cancel. But I'm hoping that doesn't happen.
Oh my gosh, is this Armageddon happening in real time?
Yeah.
Not real time. This is projection forecast. But it's flooding in Dubai. There's war breaking out and not breaking out. It's 25th day. Oh, yeah, interesting. So yes,
we had crazy rain today in Dubai. Like it was insane. And it was really bad rain. It's been raining for days now. There was really bad rain a couple of days ago as well. I love it. Like it's changed the weather, it's changed the atmosphere, but it's also been really weird. It's like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's been very dry here in Texas, which is this is the rainy season.
2 days ago, it was a full-on Texas-style thunderstorm with the rolling and the wind and the black sky and the lightning. And I was like, man, at first I thought, is that bombs? What the hell? Because it's boom, 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 boom. And then I could see the flashing and I went, oh my God, it's a thunderstorm. What's going on? So we got your thunderstorm.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm glad
thank
you
you.
Get a little bit of home feeling.
Yeah. Thank you. Enjoy the drought.
Yeah, I keep looking. I'm like, maybe it'll rain. Maybe, I don't know. It should be a fun summer. That's all.
It was 77 degrees today, and you were what, 90?
Yeah, I think we were up to 96 a couple days ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Enjoy the drought and the heat.
Lovely March.
We'll take the rain and the cool weather.
Absolutely. Thank you, Roy. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye, Jeremy.